The auction and the unexpected savior. The morning sun poured harshly over the dusty village square, illuminating the rough wooden stands and the anxious crowd gathered for the day's grim spectacle. Whispers of desperation mingled with the clamor of merchants hawking their goods, but all attention focused on the small raised platform at the center. There, two young women, bound by fear and familial betrayal, stood trembling. Their eyes darted around the crowd, searching for some sign of mercy, some sliver of hope. They were sisters. Aisha, the elder, sharp-eyed and quick-witted despite the quiver in her hands, and Sanaa, the younger, delicate, with a softness in her gaze that betrayed her sheltered life. Both were about to be sold by the very man who had given them life. Their father, a man whose greed had outweighed his paternal duty. Aisha's mind raced as the auctioneer's voice boomed, announcing their value to the gathered villagers. Every shout of a bid felt like another nail in the coffin of her dignity. She clenched her fists, not for herself, but for her sister, determined to shield Sanaa from the cruelty of the world, even if only in spirit. Sanaa, meanwhile, kept her head bowed, trying to make herself invisible, whispering prayers under her breath. Neither knew what awaited them beyond the raised platform, only that their lives were being weighed against silver coins. From the edge of the square, a man watched with quiet intensity. Rahim, a wealthy merchant of some renown in distant towns, had heard rumors of the auctions but had never ventured here. There was something unsettling about witnessing such a raw display of desperation. He did not speak to anyone, nor did he participate in the bidding at first. He merely observed, his dark eyes scanning the sisters, taking note of their fear, their resilience, and the injustice surrounding them. A flicker of curiosity and pity stirred within him, a sensation he had long forgotten amidst the business deals and societal obligations that defined his life. The auctioneer's gavel hit the podium again, signaling another round of bids. The father barked out commands, his eyes glittering with greed. Aisha's heart sank as she saw familiar villagers raising their hands, some with a mix of sympathy and opportunism, others with sheer hunger for profit. It was then that Rahim stepped forward, his presence commanding silence. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as he placed his hand on the podium, signaling his intention to bid. The auctioneer hesitated, a flicker of doubt in his eyes, before announcing Rahim's offer. It was higher than anyone else's, shocking even the father who had orchestrated this cruel exchange. "Enough," Rahim said, his voice steady, carrying over the restless crowd. "I'll take both of them." The crowd gasped, and the sisters froze, unsure if they should trust the stranger. Aisha's mind whirled. A stranger purchasing them might not mean freedom, only a different form of captivity. Yet the relief that softened her sister's face was unmistakable. Sanaa's lips parted in a whisper of gratitude, tears glinting in her eyes, though fear still gripped her heart. Rahim gave no explanations to the villagers. There was no time for justifications. He simply gestured for the sisters to follow him. The journey from the village to Rahim's estate was long and silent, the sisters seated in a carriage that smelled faintly of cedar and leather. Each mile stretched their nerves taut, a mixture of anxiety, relief, and suspicion intertwining with every bump of the wheels. Rahim rode ahead, his gaze fixed on the horizon, contemplating the future he had just altered with a single decision. He thought of his sons, Ali and Zion, and of the roles these young women might play in his carefully structured household. He did not yet know if they would be companions, guardians, or something entirely unforeseen, but he felt an inexplicable certainty that their arrival would ripple through the lives of everyone in his mansion. As the sprawling estate came into view, a sense of awe struck the sisters. Towering columns, manicured gardens, and fountains gleaming in the sunlight hinted at wealth beyond their comprehension. Yet beneath the beauty lay a formality that made their hearts race. Grandeur and isolation intertwined, signaling that freedom and comfort were not necessarily the same. They were about to step into a world that was both a sanctuary and a cage, and neither sister could yet tell which it would be. Rahim guided them through the mansion's vast corridors, the echoes of their footsteps filling the silence. "You are safe now," he said, his tone firm yet strangely reassuring. "Here, your lives will be different, though not without expectation." The words puzzled the sisters, suggesting both protection and obligation, a delicate balance of power and promise. As they entered the central hall, the scene paused, the sisters on one side, Rahim on the other, the mansion looming around them like a vast, watchful presence. For the first time since the auction began, Aisha dared a glance at her new surroundings, at the man who had purchased them, and at the uncertain life that awaited. Somewhere deep in her heart, a spark of hope flickered. It was fragile, but it existed. The chapter closed with the sisters standing in the grand hall, the weight of their past pressing behind them, and the possibilities of the future stretching ahead, a future that promised both safety and unforeseen trials. Rahim watched them quietly, knowing that the story he had begun would unfold in ways even he could not yet imagine. The mansion and hidden currents. The first morning in Rahim's mansion dawned with a light both soft and indifferent, spilling through vast arched windows into the ornate halls. The sisters awoke in rooms filled with unfamiliar luxury, polished wooden floors, thick rugs woven with intricate patterns, and heavy curtains that muted the morning sun. Aisha's eyes swept the room with cautious curiosity, noting both beauty and confinement. Sanaa sat on the edge of her bed, her hands folded in her lap, silently absorbing the grandeur. Neither spoke. Words seemed insufficient to bridge the chasm between their past life of fear and the opulent present. Before long, Rahim appeared, dressed simply yet with the air of authority that defined him. "Come," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You must meet my sons. They will be part of your lives from now on." His words were measured, carrying no unnecessary warmth, but neither cruelty. It was a statement of fact, not invitation. The sisters exchanged a glance, sensing the weight behind his tone. This meeting, like the auction, would define the beginning of their existence in this mansion. Ali, the elder son, waited in the library, a room of polished wood and shelves heavy with leather-bound volumes. He stood tall, shoulders squared, with an aura of self-assurance that seemed to fill the space. His dark eyes assessed the newcomers with a mixture of curiosity and caution. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady yet edged with authority. "You are the sisters Rahim spoke of." There was no malice, but neither was there softness. Aisha nodded, her chin lifted in silent pride. She could meet his gaze, though her heart fluttered with unease. Zion, Rahim's younger son, followed moments later. In contrast to Ali's commanding presence, Zion moved with a quiet grace, his expressions gentle, his curiosity evident but restrained. His gaze lingered on Sanaa, who had instinctively taken a step back, a blush coloring her cheeks. Unlike Ali, Zion spoke first to ease tension. "I am Zion. Do not fear us. We are not here to harm you." His words, simple yet sincere, softened some of the anxiety in the sisters' hearts. Sanaa's shoulders relaxed slightly, though her eyes remained wary. Rahim observed silently, noting the dynamics unfolding. He had brought these girls into his household for reasons that straddled both practicality and instinct, a desire to protect, but also to ensure continuity of his lineage and influence. Yet he could not predict how the threads of attraction, loyalty, and rebellion would weave themselves between his sons and the sisters. That uncertainty thrilled and unsettled him in equal measure. The sisters spent the day navigating the mansion's routines. Ali observed Aisha with a mixture of intrigue and frustration. Her sharp mind, her quick wit, and her occasional defiance challenged his usual control over every situation. He found himself drawn to her intelligence, a magnetism that irritated and fascinated him simultaneously. Aisha, in turn, measured him carefully, recognizing both strength and rigidity in his character. She understood instinctively that bending him to her would require strategy and patience, yet part of her admired his unwavering sense of purpose. Meanwhile, Sanaa and Zion discovered a different rhythm. Their interactions were softer, moments of quiet understanding forming bridges between them. A shared glance over a tray of morning tea, a hesitant question about the gardens, a fleeting touch as books were passed, each encounter layered with understated tension, yet anchored in gentle camaraderie. Sanaa, with her innate kindness and gentle disposition, resonated with Zion's sensitivity. For the first time since the auction, she felt a flicker of trust, though caution still tempered her emotions. The household staff, observed from the periphery, whispers and speculations weaving through the corridors. In the mansion, alliances and judgments formed as quickly as the sisters adapted to the new environment. Aisha's intelligence did not go unnoticed, and her subtle defiance sparked curiosity, even admiration. Sanaa's gentleness evoked protection and concern, her quiet demeanor a counterbalance to her sister's spirited nature. Evenings were quiet, marked by candlelight and shadows that stretched long across the marble floors. Rahim convened a private conversation with his sons, discussing plans for the future, marriages, alliances, and the subtleties of social perception. The sisters, though unaware of the full weight of these discussions, sensed the undertone. Their fates were intertwined with the ambitions of this household. The knowledge stirred a mixture of apprehension and anticipation, emotions that lay dormant in the depths of their hearts until now. By nightfall, the sisters retired to their shared chamber, a space that felt both protective and isolating. Aisha spoke first, her voice low and resolute. "We must be careful, Sanaa. This world, it is not ours, and yet it demands we adapt." Sanaa nodded, understanding her sister's wisdom. Yet her own thoughts drifted toward Zion and the possibility of kindness in a world so unpredictable. Their bond, though tested by fear and uncertainty, remained steadfast. The day closed with tension hanging delicately between the characters. Ali and Aisha circling each other with unspoken challenges. Zion and Sanaa forming quiet bonds of trust. Rahim watching it all, calculating, curious, and cautious. The mansion, though grand and luxurious, had already begun to transform into a stage for emotions, desires, and conflicts that none could fully anticipate. And as the sisters lay in bed, the soft rustle of the night wind against the curtains seemed to whisper possibilities they were only beginning to imagine. Hidden desires and silent conflicts. The days in Rahim's mansion fell into a rhythm both structured and suffocating. Each morning, the sisters awoke to the quiet grandeur of their rooms, each item a reminder of their new reality, safety intertwined with obligation. Aisha moved through the halls with purposeful poise, her mind ever calculating, ever observing. She had begun to understand the subtle hierarchies of the household, the servants' whispers, the fleeting glances of her new brothers-in-law, the careful tone Rahim employed when speaking. Every detail mattered, and Aisha absorbed them all, not merely as a strategy for survival, but as a way to assert her presence in a world that threatened to sweep her away. Sanaa, in contrast, moved with gentleness, her steps light and almost tentative. She spent her mornings in the gardens, tending to the delicate roses and jasmine that thrived under her care. Zion often joined her, carrying a book or a sketch pad, his demeanor calm yet attentive. Their conversations were soft, meandering between simple observations of the flowers and profound reflections on the changes in their lives. Each shared moment deepened a connection that neither fully understood, an emotional tether forming quietly, binding them together in ways words alone could not capture. Ali, meanwhile, found himself increasingly drawn to Aisha's intellect and audacity. He would watch her from the library doorway, noting how she challenged ideas, questioned instructions, and navigated the subtle social politics of the household. Her strength intrigued him, stirring a fascination that bordered on obsession. Yet there was tension beneath it. He was aware of his own arrogance, of the danger in underestimating her, and he realized that attraction often walked hand in hand with conflict. Every conversation, every glance between them carried weight, a silent negotiation of desire, respect, and pride. The sisters, too, began to sense the complex emotions of the mansion's occupants. Aisha noticed Ali's occasional smoldering gaze, the slight edge in his tone when he disagreed with her ideas. Sanaa felt Zion's protective glances, subtle gestures of kindness, and the quiet patience he offered. Neither sister had been prepared for these new dynamics, the blend of gratitude, attraction, and ethical complexity that threaded itself through each interaction. They were learning, slowly, how to wield influence, how to respond without surrendering themselves entirely. One evening, as the golden light of dusk filtered through the windows, the household gathered for tea. Conversation was polite, restrained, yet charged with undercurrents of emotion. Aisha debated a trivial point of philosophy with Ali, their dialogue sharp yet playful. Each word, each counterpoint, carried layers beyond the surface, respect interwoven with rivalry, challenge mixed with fascination. Sanaa and Zion, seated across from them, exchanged quiet smiles, their bond unspoken yet palpable, a silent dance of empathy and affection. Rahim observed from his seat, noting these developments with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. The girls were adapting, yet their influence on his sons was apparent. The seeds of desire, gratitude, and defiance were sprouting in equal measure, forming a delicate balance he could neither fully control nor ignore. He realized that while he had rescued them from one form of captivity, he had inadvertently placed them into another, a household governed by subtle power dynamics, emotional tension, and the unspoken rules of attraction and loyalty. Tensions, though understated, were inevitable. Aisha's sharp intellect clashed with Ali's ego, leading to debates that left both exhilarated and frustrated. Sanaa's gentle nature sparked protective instincts in Zion, who often found himself stepping into quiet acts of guardianship, from rescuing her from minor accidents in the gardens to ensuring her comfort in new surroundings. These interactions, small yet potent, allowed desire to bloom beneath the veneer of propriety, creating moments of conflict and longing that neither side could fully articulate. One night, after the household had retired, Aisha stood by her window, gazing at the moonlit gardens below. Her mind wandered to Ali, to the subtle admiration in his eyes, to the challenge he represented, to the dangerous allure of a connection she had yet to fully embrace. She knew that emotions, if unchecked, could threaten both her safety and her autonomy. Yet the thought of his presence, of the sparks that ignited between them, was impossible to ignore. Sanaa, in the adjacent room, lay awake listening to the rustle of leaves outside her window. She thought of Zion, of the quiet understanding he had shown, of the moments of laughter and unspoken comfort. Her heart stirred with a mixture of hope and fear. Hope for a gentleness that had been absent in her life, fear that the boundaries she had relied on could soon dissolve. By the end of the night, both sisters understood an unspoken truth. The mansion offered safety, wealth, and opportunity, but also a complex web of desires, loyalties, and moral dilemmas. They had been rescued from one peril, yet another, far more subtle and emotionally potent, awaited them. And somewhere deep in the shadows of that grand estate, the seeds of romance, conflict, and infidelity had already begun to take root, promising trials and choices that could define the course of all their lives. Bonds forged and futures entwined. Morning arrived in Rahim's mansion with a quiet brilliance, the sunlight spilling across polished floors and ornate pillars, casting long shadows that danced like whispers across the halls. The sisters, now more acclimated to the rhythms of the household, moved with a blend of confidence and caution. Aisha's eyes, sharp and discerning, lingered on the corridors, aware of both opportunity and observation. Sanaa, gentle and composed, carried herself with a calm that belied the apprehension lingering deep within her heart. Today, however, the atmosphere carried a sense of anticipation beyond the ordinary. Today was a day that would change everything. Rahim convened the household in the grand hall, a space of grandeur that dwarfed even the tallest guests. The sons, Ali and Zion, stood at his side, composed yet visibly tense. Rahim's voice, steady and authoritative, addressed the gathering. The sisters will join our family in a more formal capacity. They will marry my sons. This union is both a matter of honor and of gratitude. Their presence has already altered our lives in ways none can deny." His words carried both command and reassurance, leaving little room for objection. The sisters felt a mixture of relief and apprehension, aware that their fates were now irrevocably intertwined with those who had observed, guided, and challenged them these past weeks. Preparations for the ceremonies began immediately. The mansion buzzed with activity. Silk and velvet swirled through corridors, servants arranged flowers with meticulous care, and the scent of incense mingled with the fresh fragrance of morning blossoms. Aisha and Sanaa moved among the preparations, their emotions a blend of nervous excitement and reflective gratitude. Aisha, ever the strategist, considered her new role carefully. She would need to navigate the complexities of her husband's expectations, the household's hierarchy, and her own desires. Yet beneath the surface, a spark of anticipation glimmered. The possibility of companionship and respect with Ali, a man whose strength matched her intellect. Sanaa, meanwhile, found her thoughts drawn to Zion. Each glance they shared in the quiet moments of preparation carried unspoken reassurance, the gentle affirmation of a bond neither had yet named aloud. She reflected on the past weeks, the small kindnesses, the shared smiles, the quiet confidence that Zion had shown in both her and the household. For the first time, the idea of family did not feel like a cage, but a potential home. As the evening approached, the ceremonies began. The halls were illuminated by candles and lanterns, casting warm, golden light that softened the grandeur into intimacy. Guests gathered in respectful silence, observing without intrusion, allowing the events to unfold with a dignity that matched the household's ethos. Aisha walked with poise beside Ali, her hand lightly resting in his, a gesture both ceremonial and subtly intimate. Zion guided Sanaa through the process with quiet attentiveness, a gentle touch that conveyed understanding and reassurance without need for words. Rahim watched from his position, his expression unreadable. He had orchestrated these unions carefully, balancing gratitude, social expectation, and the practical needs of his household. Yet he understood that the heart cannot be dictated entirely, that desire, affection, and loyalty were unpredictable forces. Observing the subtle connections forming before him, he allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction, recognizing that the seeds he had planted were flourishing in unexpected ways. The sisters, in the midst of ceremony, felt the weight of history and anticipation converge. Aisha met Ali's eyes and saw in them not just authority, but respect, a willingness to meet her as an equal. Her pulse quickened, tempered by awareness of the responsibilities now resting upon her shoulders. Sanaa, gazing at Zion, felt a quiet contentment that mingled with her lingering apprehensions. They were entering a new chapter, one defined not by fear or circumstance, but by connection, choice, and the slow blossoming of trust and affection. By nightfall, the ceremonies concluded. The mansion, now quiet except for the gentle rustle of evening breezes through open windows, seemed to breathe with a renewed sense of life. The sisters retired to their chambers, hearts heavy with reflection, yet lightened by acceptance. Ali and Zion lingered briefly in the halls, exchanging glances that spoke of unspoken promises and shared understanding. The chapter and the story closed on a note of delicate resolution. The sisters had been rescued from peril, yet their journey had evolved into something more profound, a confrontation with desire, loyalty, and moral complexity, culminating in the union with men who had observed, tested, and ultimately valued them. The mansion, a space of opulence and restraint, now held new bonds, forged in the crucible of circumstance, patience, and unspoken understanding. In the quiet that followed, possibilities stretched before them. Not all predictable, not all controllable, but undeniably theirs to navigate. The night air whispered against the curtains, carrying the promise of challenges and the subtle thrill of new beginnings. And in that quiet, each character understood. Life within the walls of Raheem's mansion would never be simple, but it was now theirs to shape.